some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
2 hello. Sorry folks. Lucid, thanks very much for the raid. How was the Lucid Fox stream today? I heard the B-boy breakdancing dad apology video is being watched. Love that guy. Listen, Lucid, like, it's easier for any of us to criticize someone, but at the end of the day, do we have the courage to go out there and chase after our dream? You know? Do we have the courage to do it? Do we have what it takes to go out there and chase after our dream? You know, it's easy to criticize. It's easy to criticize. But I think John Lennon once said, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. Not everyone can pursue their passion and their dream and drop everything to do so. I chased it till I realized it's not what I wanted, so I took a U-turn into gooning. I just turned to the gooning to cope with the ever-growing realization that my dreams are just never going to happen. You know? It's not like I'm pursuing gooning like an interest. It's more of just like a coping mechanism. To get good enough, you can go pro. The Pro Gooning League. Sorry, I was just making a chicken sandwich. Just making a little chicken sandwich to start the day here. It's pretty simple. Leftover rotisserie chicken, mayo, sriracha, American cheese pickle. I don't know about gooning that's like 24 hours of straight jacking it. I'd rather just be a 10 time a day coomer everywhere I go, like Pokemon Go. I'm not sure I know what coomer means. I think I missed out on that. That's how behind in the lingo I am. I just learned about gooning recently, and not sure I know what that means. But it's true, though. I mean, we joke around about the whole gooning thing. It is a lot of jacking off. You know? Let's be real here. It's a lot of jacking off. Like, I don't think I have the time. It's just a time issue, you know? Just jacking and no off. That's right. Cooming is just enjoying the beauty that nature offers. Well, that doesn't sound so bad. And that's true. It's just like, again, don't get too into the blue material here, but I always thought the off was a central component to the whole jacking off concept, you know? And there's a whole school of thought emerging that's asking, well, what if it wasn't? What if we just took that part out? You know? And I'm glad people are figuring things out and experimenting with whatever, you know, people can do what they like. That to me never made a lot of sense. You know, I feel like that's a key component in my view. You know, again, I don't want to kink shame. I don't want to shame anybody for what they're into. In my experience, though, the off part is you got to have that. You know, you got to have that as included in the whole process. As Mr. Miyagi said, jack on, jack off. In the classic film, that would put kind of a dark spin on the Ralph Macchio, Mr. Miyagi relationship. That's what it was about, the gooning kid. He's got to learn from the kindly old janitor. Oh, man. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. It reminds me of something 27 Club said yesterday when Benny and I were playing Fortnite. The kids are all playing sweeted connectors in poker. I'm not sure what that means. The Hill Valley Gooning Tournament. The crane technique. Oh. Oh, that's good. That's nice. No McFly ever gooned enough in the entire history of Hill Valley. Now we're just getting way off the rails already. We're getting way off the rails already. This is what happens when Lucid raises this channel. Immediately we just start talking about whacking off. I wanted things to be professional, efficient, not a lot to ask.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good
As soon
old
as
Rob
Lucid
to
and
talk
Lucid's
you through
Raiders
all
show up,
this.
it's all just...
Gooning needs a return to tradition. Sitting on the toilet with the Sears catalog until your legs go numb.
Old Dutch, thank you for the 35 months. Resub at tier 2. 1 month away, Old Dutch, from the elite and exclusive 36-month, 3-year Pearl sub badge. As I'm trying to blame the whole gooning phenomenon on Lucid and Lucid's Raiders, immediately we're talking about Pearl sub badges and being exposed. Can count on good old Sears catalog to goon you through all this. I'm not quite that old, okay? I'm old, but I'm not that old. That's like 50s suburban, repressed suburban dad kind of stuff. I'm not quite that old. Thanks again, Old Dutch, for that. I don't know. Honestly, I don't exactly know what we're talking about today. Purchasing a floppy disk with one pornographic JPEG on it. That's right. I got a big stash of them in the back. First porno mag was a Pam Anderson Playboy. What a time. Man, Pam Anderson in the 90s. Wow. What a legend. I had a couple of Pam Anderson posters in my room growing up as a teenager, by the way. Anyway, we had another great session last night. Another long. I did a second stream last night for over 3 hours. Again. We're all hell diving. We're in pure hell divers right now. I hear we're gooning. No, absolutely not, Orb Lady. You missed it. Okay, we had a good 15 minutes to talk about jacking off. Now we're moving past it. I finally got in just after midnight. I'm sure it's going to get easier to get in. Marty comes into the super personal jacking off analogy. That's good. That's good that you got in, Lodane. We'll get you to the squad too. I think we can help you level up. You can be in universe you're going to be the rookie, the wide-eyed rookie, and we're the grizzled vets that are going to be able to take you in there. You got to try Meta Wolf Chaos someday. I tried it last night in Hot Dang. The thing is, I can't do a new game now though. I just got into a new game, which I'm more into than any game that I've been into for quite some time. I can't do another new game now. You know? U.S. vetoes UN security resolution. Well, we can look at that then today. UK abstains. It was cowardly, especially even after with the whole Rafah thing. It almost seemed like they were going to start asking for a ceasefire just for some kind of face-saving maneuver, and just they can't even do that. Absolutely embarrassing, disgusting, violent sociopaths. Luckily, it's not an online thing, just a dumb single-player thing. Metal Wolf Chaos. I do like mech shooters. That does look pretty cool. That does look kind of neat. You know what game I really loved back in the day was Mech Warrior 2. What new game, Artie? It's Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 is one of the very best games that I have ever played. We had another long session last night. We did a couple more of those defense missions as well, which are very difficult, but we've kind of figured these out. MW2, I still default to MechWarrior. I just remember MechWarrior 2 had that really cool, like, intro. Like, it had a whole, like, CG, like, story, not CGI is the right word, but, like, kind of, like, cinematic, like, opening intro, and it was so cool. Is Helldivers 2 the reason that Starship Troopers discourse popped up a few days ago? I mean, I don't know if it's the reason. I think the reason is just because people are stupid and they don't understand Paul Verhoeven films, even though they're very, like, kind of not subtle. I think that's the reason why, but it is a kind of weird coincidence, isn't it? So, Old Dutch, it's like this squad-based... Okay, it's a squad-based game where you play with either by yourself, which is very difficult, although you can do it, but you can play with a squad of up to 4 people. It's Starship Troopers, it's Aliens, it's Terminator Future War. You're across the galaxy, you're defending and liberating these planets in either the one sector of the galaxy that's being overrun by these bug aliens and another sector that's being overrun by automaton robots. And it really, like, it feels like a war zone. Like, it feels... I've been full robot war the whole time, and it feels like you're in an actual war. Like, it's incredibly intense. Bringing liberal democracy to the planet. That's right. A whole entire new planets full of new voters. I've been squashing bugs. Yeah, I've only done like 2 bug missions. I can't do it. Oh, I didn't see this. Oh, that's cool. That's cool, Marty. Malevolent Creek veteran, yeah. Yeah, I just saw that in the Wings of Starlight. Well, that's it. We'll get a squad going again soon. I don't think people were too stupid to understand the Starship Troopers satire. I think they just unabashedly like the fascism. Well, I guess that what they're too stupid. They like the fascism, but they refuse to accept that the movie is a criticism of that and that ideology. I'm just like going to sleep at night, and I'm like, when I close my eyes, I see the waves of red eyes coming over the crest of the horizon. I'm gonna have PTSD flashbacks to some of this shit. It's obviously a criticism and lampoon of fascism, but I don't think it really matters what the intent was, though. It must be nice to just kind of turn your brain off and just enjoy that shit, I guess. You know? I don't really like or respect the people that are doing that, but it must be kind of nice just to not think critically about anything whatsoever. I'm going to get Havana syndrome as a result of the automaton war. I will forever name all my spaceships the NSEA Protector after that awesome ship in Galaxy Quest. That sounds good. That sounds good. Yeah, I've been really enjoying that. I did another couple missions today too. I did a bunch of stuff this morning, like parent stuff. So I brought my kid to school. I went and picked up some special cat food for Momo. I went to the pharmacy. I went and got groceries. I got back and I'm like, now it's time. Rather than do other things that are productive, like clean my apartment, which is now messy again, My sink's full of dishes. I could have spent time doing that, but I was like, you know what? I put some time in doing serious stuff this morning. I am going to drop in and do some missions. His new friend, Helldiver Stu, broke up with the old best friend, Yoga. I don't know what I was thinking making this promise, making this resolution. I don't know what I was thinking. Put the dishes there. Hamas. I agree. I think that was right. Yeah, tampon taste tester. Oh God. I'm pretty. It seems like it's getting better. The whole server issues. So I imagine within the next couple of days, it's going to be way better. I haven't had to wait for more than a couple minutes the last couple times I've tried to log on. Hey, Mark, how's it going? I'm doing okay. I saw something else. I saw some guy on TikTok, I think it was, talking about how, like, the new year, like, it really shouldn't be in January 1st. Like, the new year should be the spring, It should be the spring. That's why none of our resolutions matter, because we're just trying to get through the winter, and we can't keep it up. I'm going to punt my resolutions to the spring. How about that? I'm going to punt, and then you vote. You don't even know. Just you wait. In the spring, I'm going to take my resolution seriously. The equinox resolution. A New Year's cleaning and a spring resolution. I think this makes way more sense. Yes, it's why, Ladane. Yes, it's why. That's what Iran do? Or what Iran does? Good. Good. That just gives all the more evidence that it's the right thing to do. Look at Nowruz. The Iranian or Persian New Year, celebrated by various ethnic groups worldwide, that started as a Zoroastrian celebration. It's a festival of the Iranian solar Hijri calendar, or on the spring equinox, on or around March 21st of the Gregorian calendar. Now, I love it. Tuesday, March 19th. Tuesday, March 19th. New me. Okay? Just you wait. I agree, Spooky. Oh, that's good. Okay, good. Well, that's settled then. Sure, we could celebrate it together. Sounds good. Let me close some of these windows here. Too many windows open. Okay. I don't really know what we're doing, what we're talking about today. We talked about the UN stuff. I mean, that seems like it's important to maybe look at some of the footage of that. I don't know if there's any more chit chat. All I really have going in my life worth chatting about at this moment is really just Helldivers. That's all I'm thinking about. Did you see how mad Libs got at Rashida for suggesting her constituents not vote for Biden in the primary? No, but that sounds about right. That sounds like something that would piss people off. I mean, what's the point of voting in the primary? You have to be a sick person. You have to be a sicko to go out and spend time voting for Joe Biden in the primary that's not even happening. There's not even a Democratic primary, even though we still don't even know if Joe Biden's going to run in the next election. You have to be an absolutely sick person to go out and vote for Joe Biden. Just not to say one thing of the general election, but in the primary. You're going to go vote in the primary for Joe Biden just for why? Why reason? What reason? Yeah, we saw that, Old Dutch. We talked about it yesterday. I talked about a little bit the irony between like being accused of supporting terrorism because you support Palestine and then turning around and supporting terrorism when it comes to moderate rebels being armed by the U.S. government to destabilize and overthrow another country. And one of them is okay, and one of them gets you celebrated, and one of them gets you denounced. I'm writing you in, Rob, even though you're Canadian, possibly not even 35. Well, Doc, not so strange. I do appreciate that you said that I might not even be 35. I am indeed over 35. I'm 40 years old. So yeah, if anyone does want to write me in the primary, please do. If you're American and you want to write me in the primary, please do. If you want to take time out of your day to go vote in the primary and write in Rob Rousseau, I'm not going to stop you. It would be, I could get a few votes. It would be kind of cool. I can't vote in America, but it's not going to stop me from having an opinion. No, absolutely not. Me neither. You see Stephen Harper going on his Israeli bag-licking trip. Here's how Rob can still win. Let's buckle up, chuckle dicks. Here's how he can still win. No, I didn't see Stephen Harper doing that, but that's amazing too. I mean, it'll be funny if they try to like paint Trudeau as being too nice to Palestinians. If they try to say Justin Trudeau has been like too harsh on Israel. I see a lot of his critics doing that, like in Trudeau's mentions, despite the fact that they've fully backed Israel on absolutely everything. Being like, just say that you support Palestine and support Hamas, Trudeau. Like they really don't think. So that would be a funny angle. Even when you give them absolutely everything that they want, because you have some mild, tepid criticism. He did ask for a cessation of hostilities. Well, I think they did ask for there was more of an official ceasefire statement put out by Canada and Australia and New Zealand. But I talked a little bit about that yesterday. I think that's like too little too late. It's too little too late. It's a purely face-saving move. They're not meaningfully doing anything to pressure Israel. This ceasefire framework is going to be entirely based on like Palestinians surrendering and going back to the already brutally violent status quo, probably releasing hostages without getting anything in return, any of the thousands of Palestinians that are being held hostage. Yeah, Trudeau going to be meeting with the Italian president soon. He seems to be psyched to be working with an open fascist. That's right. You can put those two together in a room. Basically, like Biden calling Netanyahu an asshole while doing nothing. Except at least, like, even while Biden has done nothing, Canada has, like, made some kind of, like, moderate bullshit pitch to have a ceasefire. But Biden's not even doing that. Well, that's it. Empty words are still too much. That's what I mean. They're still going to be criticized as being not supportive enough. They're still going to be criticized as basically being like stealth Hamas supporters. They've gotten the world that they want and they're still angry. Well, that's the ultimate like reactionary mentality. That's the classic reactionary mentality. You get everything that you want and you're still not happy. He wagged his finger during a phone call. Well, we can take a look at some of this UN stuff. Get everything you want, you're still somehow the victim is more accurate. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like that when it comes to Zionists and supporters of Israel, but I think this is just ultimately the reactionary mentality, this like perpetual victimhood. Like you don't just see this with Zionists, you see this in the conservative movement in general. So let's look how this is framed in...
A call for more humanitarian aid into Gaza.
This is how CBC frames this. U.S. proposes temporary Israel-Hamas ceasefire in UN Security Council resolution. Let's look at that and then look at what actually ended up happening.
Gaza is part of a new U.S. draft resolution before the UN Security Council. The resolution also proposes a temporary ceasefire, and that's something Washington has not done before. Sarah Coates has our reporting. She's in Tel Aviv today.
Certainly is a significant shift in US policy. The United States, so far up until now, really resisting all of these calls for a ceasefire, saying that Israel has every right to defend itself. But now this proposed draft is for a temporary ceasefire as soon as practicable, saying that also, Israel should not change the borders of Gaza, warning Israel in this draft as well that it should not go into Rafah, where we know that around 1.4 displaced Palestinians are sheltering. Now, Israel is planning on pushing ahead with this mission into Rafah. We heard from the Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, over the last couple of days saying that this will happen by Ramadan, which is on around March 10, unless all of these hostages are released. And Heather, we can report at this hour also that a senior Hamas delegation, including the leader of its political bureau, Ismail Haniyeh, that delegation has just arrived in Cairo for talks with senior Egyptian...
Sorry, thanks for reminding me. I can't hear the music playing because it's turned down low enough, so sorry about that.
Officials on ways to end this war and potentially also this hostage release deal. And it is widely expected that the top US Mideast envoy, Brett McGurk, he's set to touch down in Egypt to also be included in these talks tomorrow before coming here to Israel, Heather.
So, key moments perhaps in the very near future, Sarah. I do want you to tell us about a video released by the Israeli military. It sparked a really angry protest from hostage families, Sarah. Tell us about the video and the response to it.
The hostages that we're supposed to care about?
Certainly, many of your viewers, Heather, will probably remember the Bibas family. They've really become a poster family, if you will, for these hostages. These two little boys, there's 4-year-old Ariel, his little brother Kafir, who was only 9 months old when he and his mother and father were all taken into Gaza as hostages. Now the IDF has released a video showing the first few days when they were inside Gaza. You can see them wrapped in a towel, being pushed into a car. And this has really sparked widespread protests right around the country. People are furious. They are desperate to get these hostages back. Over the last few days, there were demonstrations here in Tel Aviv outside the Prime Minister's private residence in Caesarea, and also in Jerusalem. Thousands of people clashing with police. There were many arrests made. And people are absolutely furious at what they see as a lack of government action, saying that a deal needs to be done now at whatever the cost to bring these 130 or so hostages home. Let's have a listen to what the IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari
This whole taking of hostages was just about getting out their own people. Like we've talked about, Israel has thousands of hostages, and they call them terrorists, but you know, just word to the wise for people. Just because Israel said something doesn't necessarily make it true. And in fact, if they do say something like these people are terrorists, that's probably a good sign that that's a lie and they're not terrorists at all. As we've talked about, many of these people put in prison when they're little kids, you know, charged with whatever, throwing a stone, or not even knowing what the charge is. Having God knows what the fuck's happening to them in these Israeli prisons for years and years and years, thousands of people. That's what this whole operation was about. Taking hostages that then they can cut a deal and get as many people as they can back. That's always what that was about. And that could have happened immediately. That could have happened 4 months ago. And this we've seen 4 months of ethnic cleansing and genocide and mass murder. And instead. There's something very wrong with people who, in the face of a genocide happening and tens of thousands of civilians murdered, still give a fuck about these hostages. Well, I mean, I think you can give a fuck about these hostages and direct your anger or frustration at the Israeli government for like spending the last 4 months destroying Gaza, killing tens of thousands of people, killing tens of thousands of children, rather than just doing the deal to get these people back immediately. You know? If you care about hostages, if you say bring the hostages home, bring them home. If anyone should care about these people, you should be angry at the Israeli government for continually over the last 4 months putting these people's lives in far greater jeopardy with this bombing campaign. It's kind of like Ukraine sent them $113 billion for them to give Russia the same peace deal they suggested like 2 years ago. It's actually going to be a worse deal. It's actually going to be a worse peace deal. Whatever Ukraine ends up signing, if that's even on the table now, it's going to be worse than whatever was offered initially. So yeah, great job on the sending hundreds of billions of dollars into that money pit and getting hundreds of thousands of people killed for the same result, which me and like the dumb shitheads, no offense, that watch this program could have told anybody 2 years ago. That was a term of endearment. Okay? That was a term of endearment. But you know, it's true. the Israeli government has not only killed many of these hostages already, but has the hostages that are still alive are being put in more jeopardy every single day because they just refuse to make an actual deal to get them back. I truly care for Ukraine by sending Ukrainians into the meat grinder at the stalemate border. That's right. That's how you show that you care so much about Ukraine. No surrender. Don't surrender to Putler. That's how much I care about Ukraine. Let's continue encouraging and escalating that until the entire country is destroyed and even more thousands of people are killed. Let's do that. You know? Let's do that. We'll fight to the last Ukrainian child. That's how much we care about Ukrainians and their sovereignty. We want them to be sovereign. That's why we're encouraging that we continue escalating this hopeless war for an even longer period of time. That's how sovereign they are. Yeah, Old Dutch, that clip was crazy of the editor of The Economist. We're keeping our country safe by pressuring Putin, and Ukrainians are the ones that are dying. It's like, Jesus Christ. People say I'm callous about this. That's the most callous you could possibly be. We're protecting our security, and these are the dumb fucks we're throwing on the front lines. It's brilliant. You know? We're not even losing any of our people, just these fucking guys. Like, that's crazy to me. And as a bonus, it gives the far-right Azov weirdos more power when they inevitably take over Zelensky's post. Yeah. 100%. It really, of course it comes across like that. And again, these are the people that like are like, we love Ukraine and we support Ukraine, and they look at the things that like I and others are saying about this and be like, you don't like Ukraine, you don't support Ukraine. The way you show support for them is by ensuring that they continually remain cannon fodder for Western interests and Western values. That's how you show you care about them. They never reckon with the obvious conclusion to all this: the Nazis take over. And PM Trio, when that inevitably does happen, all of these people are going to be going, "What in the world?" It's going to be like, I'm angry and disgusted just thinking about it already. All these same people are going to be looking around, going, "What? How could this have happened?" How could this have happened? This outcome, none of us could have foreseen this. Yeah, that's what we were just talking about, Lamport. Where did these Nazis in power come from? Why didn't someone warn us? Probably Putin sent them. I think that's it. Putin sent them to take over. That's what they're going to say. And anyway, for anyone that's still holding on to the Ukraine thing and being like, no, of course I'm against, I support Palestine. I'm against the U.S. military.
You're gonna have good old
but
Rob
we got to support Ukraine.
talk you through all this.
That's the noble
Rob Mob, let's go.
That's the noble quest that we must continue to support the brave Ukrainians and they're fighting for their freedom. And then you just see like the U.S. government just packaging aid to Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan. And it's like you still can't see what this is about. You still think this is about protecting anyone's sovereignty or democracy. 10,000 sandwiches. Thanks for the 39 months of tier 2. You may be the first to 40 months. 10,000 sandwiches. You very well may. One of the most elite chatters. I should have gotten an energy drink today. I'm already tired. Let's look at the rest of this clip.
to say about this specific Bibas video.
According to the footage and intelligence that we gathered, after Shiri Bibas and her 2 children were kidnapped from their home on October 7th, they were taken to eastern Khan Yunis, to the outpost belonging to the Kataib Mujahideen terror group. The footage shows the terrorists wrapping Shiri and her babies in a sheet.
And this is why we must continue to bomb Khan
fears are
Yunis.
extremely high over this
We must
possible
continue to
move
drop bombs
from the
on this
IDF
area where
into
we think they might
Rafah.
be.
We've just heard from Israel's culture
That's how much we
minister,
care.
Miki Zohar.
That's how much we care about these
He is
folks.
also part of the ruling Likud party, Benjamin Netanyahu's party. He has just come out to say that sending troops into Rafah will endanger the lives of hostages. Heather.
Sarah Coates from Tel Aviv this morning.
So that is the U.S. The U.S. apparently proposes temporary Israeli-Hamas ceasefire in UN Security Council resolution. How did that work out in practice?
Welcome to the News Hour. The United States has once again vetoed a draft resolution on Gaza at the UN Security Council. It's the 3rd veto by the US since the start of the war. The text put forward by Algeria called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire and had 13 members voting in favour of it. The US was the only country to vote against it.
We are rapidly approaching a critical juncture where the call to halt the machinery of violence will lose its significance. Today, every Palestinian is a target for death, extermination, and genocide. We should ask ourselves how many innocent lives must be sacrificed before the Council deems it necessary to call for a ceasefire.
Now, the US ambassador to the UN says that while they rejected the text presented by Algeria, they'll be putting forward a rival resolution calling for a temporary ceasefire.
While numerous parties engage in sensitive negotiations, this is not the time for this resolution, which jeopardizes these efforts. Colleagues,
It jeopardizes peace efforts. It jeopardizes. We're trying to have a peace process here, and this ceasefire resolution's throwing a bunch of wrenches into the gears here. It's jeopardizing the peace process. Like, fuck, you think you get tired of the double speak and the double think? We're vetoing this resolution because of the peace process, you see. Just like we're giving weapons to Israel to protect themselves and spread more peace, to have more freedom and liberty. Like, it's just so sick. It's so cynical.
Publicly and privately over the last several weeks, we've submitted numerous rounds of edits. All were ignored. And so for that reason, the United States has offered an alternative resolution that would do what this text does not. Pressure Hamas to take the hostage deal that is on the table and help secure a pause that allows humanitarian assistance to
It was
reach
Netanyahu
Palestine.
that just turned down the recent deal. This idea that it's Hamas that's saying, no peace, no hostage deal, is just completely false. It's been Israel and its enablers in the US and the UK and other Western countries that have been stalling this process all along. Again, just like they stalled it in Ukraine when they sent Boris Johnson over there to scuttle a possible peace deal. It's crazy making, but also clarifying. Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ. These people are truly shameless.
In desperate need.
Well, in a moment, we'll get reaction in Gaza.
This whole, yeah, seriously, Kijiji, like, how do you live with yourself like this? The entire
at the United Nations. And James,
The
often
whole
diplomats
U.S.
play their
delegation,
cards very close to
Kirby
their
and the
chest
other
when it comes to
fucking
voting
worms at the
in
State
Security
Department,
Council, but I think we had an inkling of what
Anthony
was going to happen
Blinken,
today.
all these people, they're just monsters.
We knew what was going to happen today, and I'm
And
afraid we're seeing
liars.
exactly the same picture that we've seen a number of times before. This is the fourth time that the US has vetoed the idea of a ceasefire in the UN Security Council. And remember, this resolution,
They're just as bad as
demanding
the
an
settlers on the
immediate
border
ceasefire in
blocking
Gaza
aid trucks.
would have
Yeah, it's
passed
functionally,
if it
it's the
wasn't
exact
for the
same.
United States using its veto power as a permanent member of the Security Council. Every other member of the Security Council voted for it, apart from the UK. The UK Ambassador Barbara Woodward is explaining her vote to the Security Council right now. They abstained, though, even though they're also a permanent member. That would not have blocked it. It's only the US that, again, has blocked this from happening and says this is not the right time, and says it's coming up with its own resolution, and says that it needs to delay and negotiate.
We're doing our
But, of
own
course, in
resolution,
Gaza,
actually.
delay
You haven't seen
means death. Every single day, Israel is killing more and more Palestinians, and that is what will result from this resolution. It's worth giving you the US's reason, the main reason, which they say is those ongoing negotiations that have taken place involving Israel, involving Hamas indirectly, and with the intermediaries of Qatar and Egypt. But we know those negotiations are not going particularly well, and we know
The United
that
States
two
and
of the
Israel
key
just pure
players,
rogue
Egypt
states at this
and
point,
Qatar,
like
do
just
not have
ignoring
problem
any
with that
any
resolution
like
that Algeria was promoting,
norms
and
of like
voted down by the
sensibility
US
or
just now. In fact, they
diplomacy,
supported that
international law,
James, looking ahead,
the will and
obviously
the
US
feelings
now
of the
wants to
vast
present its
majority of the
own
people in the
version
world.
Of a resolution. The question will it be accepted by the Security Council? Because one of the most sort of vociferous replies to what happened today came from Russia's
really
ambassador
crazy.
at the Security Council.
Yeah, the Russians are very, very strong on this. They're making the point that they were the very first in a Security Council resolution or draft resolution that didn't get adopted to come up with the idea of a ceasefire, immediate ceasefire. That was back in October when the death toll was about 1,000, and now the death toll stands
Sorry, it
at
was
about
Russia?
30,000.
Russia
So on
asking
this
for a
issue,
ceasefire
Russia
after 1,000 people
believes
had been
that
killed.
it has the moral high ground. What will happen with regard to this US?
The evil Russians were proposing a
draft
ceasefire
resolution?
after
It's not
1
actually even been formally
week.
presented to the Security Council by the United States.
Could have
We
saved
believe
tens of
that will
thousands of
happen in the
people's
coming
lives
days, and they don't seem to be in a
if
great
they had been
hurry.
pressured to take
They
that
say, they've said to reporters they're not in a great hurry to see a Security Council resolution in place, but they've put forward what they say are the ideas they'd like to see eventually in a resolution. It's quite an extensive document the US have presented, some of it talking about reconstruction of Gaza and things that are much further down the line. There are elements there that I think will be supported by much of the Security Council, particularly a paragraph on Rafah in which the US says that an Israeli ground offensive should not proceed. But there are other parts of it, particularly on the language of a ceasefire. Everyone on the Security Council, with the exception of the UK and the US, wants to see an immediate ceasefire forced by the Security Council now. This new resolution talks
That's right,
about
Max. The number one
a
example that a
temporary
ceasefire is an obstacle to
ceasefire
peace
as soon
was
as
proposed
is
by Putler.
practicable. So the idea of a ceasefire, not one being ordered right now by the Security Council. And
If one member can veto an entire resolution, that the system is fundamentally broken from the jump, in my opinion. Yeah, and like we've talked about, these like international institutions like the UN, I think it can be value to have the debate and to get the votes on record and have people like defending certain positions or advocating for certain positions. I think there's a value in that. But yeah, when the United States has a permanent veto, it is just an arm over. It's completely powerless to impact U.S. foreign policy in any way. It's in that way, it's just completely illusory. Whatever power the UN actually does have, it has zero ability to actually enforce that against the number one foremost global military and economic superpower for now. Like that doesn't mean that I think the whole institution is useless or anything like that. I know the debates are important. Getting these votes on the record is important in a way. It's almost more about a historical record than it is about actually like having the ability to stop genocides from happening or stop wars from happening. right? And if like that's not nothing. Getting things on the historical record is not nothing, but like I believe that's pretty contrary to the idea of what the UN was supposed to be when it was founded. Honestly, the resilience of the Palestinians is amazing. It's incredibly fucked up and depressing, the conditions that they're in, but they have no food or water or anything, and they're going out foraging weeds and doing everything they can to keep each other alive. It's just incredible resilience while living through hell on earth. We have to save these people. Yeah, and it makes you feel pretty silly, I think, sometimes when I think, oh, I've seen so much violence and horror over the last 4 months. Poor me. Poor me. I've had to look at so many terrible images of children being killed and all kinds of violence and horrific things live streamed for 4 straight months. Oh, poor me, you know? But I think it's hard to feel too sorry for yourself over that kind of stuff when you see what people have been living through and they're still surviving and they're still, you know, resilient, like you said. So it's one thing that has made me no longer kind of focus on the way things like that affect me. For a while, I think it was affecting me quite a bit, but it's like, you know, after a certain point, it's like we're not having to look at this shit is not the victims. We're not the victims for having to do that. Margatron, hello, how's it going? Let's watch the rest of this.
I think that may well be a deal breaker for other members of the council, but as I say, I think we're looking at a period now again of negotiation on that US
same
text,
with Milo,
but I
Dane.
suspect other council members will also be trying to
It's
add
not
things
nothing to be able to
that
talk
text
about
or
these
take
things and
out
to
of that text.
promote this viewpoint. It's not like that pro-Palestinian anti-colonial viewpoint is being talked about in our media. So, you know, I feel like there's some value in talking about these things. But it's true. It's desperately clinging on to something when you feel very helpless and powerless.
And Tarek, I suppose, hopes of a ceasefire dashed once again.
Everyone knows the real victims are Columbia professors. That's right.
Yes, in fact, Sohail, Palestinians are seeing that the window of hope is getting much more narrow right now after the U.S. rejection of the Algerian draft for a ceasefire proposal that might bring an end for the fighting here on the ground. But Palestinians, in fact, has a great sentiment now of frustration as they have been seeing that all diplomatic efforts have been shot down by Israel's closest ally as a kind of further permission to continue their atrocities and their genocidal acts here on the ground inside Gaza as bombardment continue to unfolding all parts of the territory, and alongside that people within this rejection will be also much more living under human conditions, specifically people in the northern part of Gaza. And with the predictable suspension of aid deliveries by the World Food Programme to the northern part of the territory, it seems that's going to be much more difficult days for Palestinians in the north to experience, specifically that negotiations are still going on in Egypt for reaching a ceasefire, but till now there is no any kind of serious breakthrough in terms of these efforts, as Palestinians here are really hoping that they might reach to an end for the fighting on the ground, but they are completely right now have been let down again by the American administration to stop the bloodshed.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan
Just 1
Gonzalez.
sec.
We go now to The Hague, where the International Court of Justice is holding a 6-day hearing as over 50 countries are testifying against Israel's occupation of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. It's the largest ever participation in world courts history. Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Malki said Monday, quote, "The genocide underway in Gaza is a result of decades of impunity and inaction." Riyad Mansour, Palestinian envoy to the UN, delivered emotional testimony Monday.
The state of Palestine appeals to this court to guide the international community in upholding international law, ending injustice, and achieving a just and lasting peace. to guide us towards a future in which Palestinian children are treated as children. Not as demographic threat, in which the identity of the group to which we belong does not diminish the human rights to which we are all entitled. A future in which no Palestinian and no Israelis is killed. A future in which two states live side by side in peace.
Yeah,
and security.
absolutely 10,000 sandwiches. I mean,
the Palestinian.
We don't know if it's a fatal hit, but there definitely has been a shift. There's been a profound shift that's happened over the last few months. Like we've talked about on this show for now, like going on 4 years. Like one of the main storylines is this, like this shifting sort of geopolitical landscape, the emergence of this multipolarity or multilateralism or whatever you want to call it. The decline of U.S. empire, the decline of U.S. influence. If there's anything at all to be gained from this, it definitely feels like another hit to America's stranglehold on international relations and Western hegemony at large. That's it. It feels like a permanent stain, a permanent blow, a permanent sort of rebuke of everything that we profess to care about when it comes to our Western values. You know, I think for a generation of people here in Canada, the United States, something has fundamentally changed or shifted that can just never be brought back. And I think for people around the world as well, for anyone that was on the fence about this before, it's become kind of clear as day. You know? Yeah, that's, I mean, Olive Kate. I think a lot of Americans are in your position. Even if you had some kind of skepticism about America's role in the world, but ultimately you still thought, well, you know, we're still the good guys. We still do the right thing. We try to do the right thing. Sometimes we make mistakes or whatever. This is the kind of liberal cope for America's role in the world. But I think for a lot of people, there's something just been broken. It's just been broken forever. $10,000 sandwiches. You've eaten 10,000 sandwiches and you don't like olives? You don't have olives on one of those? On one of those guys? It feels like anyone that was annoyed by the U.S. in some way now fully hates it. Yeah. I mean, it's been incredibly radicalizing. And I guess, you know, as for us, as leftists, as socialists, as Marxists, you know, however you identify, there is value to that. When the contradictions start to heighten, and these cracks and these fissures start to form, you know, there is an opportunity there to widen those cracks and those fissures for people. You know, to wedge our bodies into these fissures and force them open even wider, make it even more apparent, you know, heighten these contradictions even more.
People only demand respect for their rights. They ask for nothing more. They cannot accept nothing less and nothing else. The future of freedom, justice, and peace can begin here and now.
That was
Fourth
Palestine's
World
permanent
Hojis, that's
representative
right.
to the United Nations, Riyad Mansour, addressing the International Court of Justice Monday. Earlier today, South African Ambassador Vusi Madonsela addressed the court.
The inordinate delay in achieving a fair and just settlement has resulted in an unending cycle of violence. A clear legal characterization of the nature of Israel's regime over the Palestinian people can only assist in remedying the ongoing delay in achieving a just settlement. We as South Africans sense, see, hear and feel to our core the inhumane discriminatory policies and practices of the Israeli regime as an even more extreme form of the apartheid that was institutionalized against black people in my country.
For more, we're joined from The Hague, where the ICJ hearing is taking place, by Ahmed Abouful, legal research and advocacy officer at the Palestinian human rights organization Al-Haq. He contributed to their advisory opinion on the case. Welcome back to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us. This is historic, what's taking place right now, Ahmed, at the International Court of Justice. More than half the world's countries are participating in this. Talk about the significance of this. And although we just played the South African envoy's comments, this is not to be confused with that other case, the South Africa bringing the case around genocide against Israel in the court that just happened a few weeks ago.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me again, Amy, and congratulations on Democracy Now's 28th anniversary. In this dystopian age of misinformation and biased media, especially in the West, we value your work and we congratulate you and hope your viewer will continue to support your important work. You're absolutely right, Amy. This is a historical moment. For over 57 years, Israel has been perpetuating its occupation in the occupied Palestinian territories, dominating every aspect of their lives, and maintaining this occupation to further facilitate and impose this apartheid regime imposed on the Palestinian people as a whole. One of the important features of this occupation is that it is colonial in nature. So it's combined with the continued unabated building of settlements and the theft of land and the demographic manipulation and engineering of the occupied Palestinian territory in an attempt to empty it from its indigenous people. A very common feature of colonial regimes and projects trying to steal the land without the people. This is a historical moment, Amy, because this is, as you mentioned, the case with the most interest by states in the history of the advisory opinion procedure before the court. And it shows you that the world have something to say about this occupation. The whole body of occupation, of the law of occupation, shows us that occupation was not intended to last that long. Occupation is temporary in nature, but the way Israel perpetrated the occupations shows that Israel is not interested in ending that occupation, but it actually needs that occupation to further implement its strategy to acquire more land by force with as less Palestinians as possible. And therefore, the premise of this case, I think there are three main legal arguments: that Israel is violating what we call in international law peremptory norms, from which no derogation is permitted. So the first norm that Israel is violating is the acquisition of territory by force or the threat of the use of force. The second is Israel's violations of the Palestinian people's right to self-determination, which is also a peremptory norm, and the opposition of regime of racial discrimination and demographic manipulation in the occupied Palestinian territory and beyond. That is a regime of apartheid imposed on the Palestinian people as a whole, denying them their unalienable rights, including Palestinian refugees who continue to be denied their right to return to their homes and villages. So this is an important moment where for the first time, we would have the principal organ of the United Nations telling us the legal consequences of Israel's occupation, and it will be extremely difficult for Israel's allies after that to justify Israel's actions in any way possible. Israel has been instrumentalizing the rules of international humanitarian law, the body of law that governs the situation of occupation, to further its settler-colonial project in Palestine. I think after this decision, which I have no doubt that the court will decide that Israel's occupation is illegal, it will be very difficult to support Israel and its policies by Israel's allies, including the U.S. So all eyes on the U.S. and how it will react to this important ruling.
And Ahmed Abou-Fola, I wanted to ask you, for those who are not familiar with these international legal bodies, could you briefly summarize the difference between the International Court of Justice proceedings and the separate case that South Africa filed, the complaint of genocide at the International Criminal Court against Israel, especially in terms of the jurisdiction or the powers of the court to have any direct effect on Israel's actions?
Yes, absolutely. I think you meant South Africa's genocide case before the very same court, the International Court of Justice, and these are two different proceedings. The International Court of Justice can look into advisory proceedings where any organ of the United Nations can ask the court to provide a legal opinion on what the court thinks of a certain matter. Usually such rulings are non-binding for states, but they're of particular importance as they guide the whole United Nations and the member states in how to approach a certain matter or a certain question. The other type of procedure is contentious cases, where states take each other to court when they have a disagreement on a matter of international law. So, for example, a disagreement on the interpretation of a particular convention to which both are parties and have accepted the court's jurisdiction. And that's exactly what South Africa did in the genocide case against Israel on the interpretation of the Genocide Convention, where it took Israel to court. So it's a case between South Africa and Israel. While in the advisory opinion proceeding, there are no two parties. There's only the court that is deciding on a matter of question, and all states around the world are invited to provide their written statements, their oral interventions, to tell the court what is their position, what is their interpretation of the law on that particular matter. Because international law is made by the practices of these states and what states around the world have accepted to be customary international law and have accepted to be the common interpretation of international law. So the law on occupation, as I said, is clear that the occupation was not intended to last that long and is temporary in nature, but it didn't set any time limit in which occupation has to end. So that's how Israel has been perpetuating this often described as prolonged occupation. It's the longest occupation in modern history, claiming under the usual security pretext that it needs to continue its control and needs to continue its domination of the Palestinian people and its violations of their permanent norms.
And what is the role of the public in these cases? Is there any?
Of course, absolutely. The public, don't have a standing in procedure or like civil society organizations, for example, like the one I'm proudly associated with, that is Al-Haq, can always submit to the court, but these submissions are not part of the proceedings. They're available at the seating of the court for states participating in the proceedings, but also for judges to read them and consult them. And we have already published a position paper outlining the key legal arguments in this case and our view on how the court should approach this case. But if you allow me, these rulings are usually of particular importance to be used after. So how, for example, the state in question will utilize this ruling in its diplomatic efforts, whether taking this ruling to the General Assembly to adopt a resolution to the same effect, or perhaps to the Security Council, although there will always be the U.S. veto. So what comes after that decision, I think, is also of particular importance. And historically, the ICJ cases have served in a way to provide guidance on what international law says and how states should behave. Obviously, not always the states have listened to such rulings or they try to disobey them. But for example, in the situation in South Africa and the ruling on the illegal presence of South African apartheid in Namibia, it served and it created momentum for the mobilization on the ground, which eventually led to the end of that regime. So hopefully this advisory opinion is also another step forward to ending Israel's settler-colonial and apartheid regime imposed on the Palestinian people as a whole.
Can you talk, Ahmed Abou-Foul, about the response of the court? This is when it was run by Joan Donoghue, and important to point out, she came out of the State Department. She's the head of the International Court of Justice.
It's been one of the frustrating things about this ICJ ruling. The way that, like, you know, like we talked, that's a funny pause face for Amy. That's better. Much more serious. We talked about how, like, I think it was important not to downplay the history of that moment of the ICJ ruling that the genocide accusation is plausible. But it's kind of interesting how it's almost like Schrodinger's ruling. Like, you have pro-Israel people pointing to that ruling, being like, "See, nothing bad is happening," and then you have people like me saying the opposite. So it's yet another kind of exercise in the fact that, like, yeah, there's these international institutions that can put down certain guidelines or rulings, but, like, it's not really changing anyone's mind that feels a certain way about this. It's certainly it's not causing Israelis or their supporters or Zionists or whoever, it's not causing them to really, like, reevaluate what their project is or what they're doing. If anything, and many of them are just using it as justification, going like, "See, everything's totally fine." So again, it's good for the historical record. I don't think that's nothing. I think that's worth celebrating, whether you're talking about the UN or the International Court of Justice, but no real ability to stop the violence from happening, and seemingly no ability to cause people that have been supporting that violence to sort of reevaluate that or to look critically about that in any way. The longer this farce goes on, the more the obvious problems of allowing Europe to keep its largely Nazi leadership in the West becomes. I mean, PM Trio, just talking about Germany. Like, in Germany, I was reading a stat, like, Jews in Germany represent, like, 2% of the population. And I think something like they represent in, like, 32% of the people who have been arrested under these new, like, anti-Semitism guidelines. So it's disproportionate. These are the anti-Semitism defenders. Germany have logged on 37%. Thank you, Kev. The anti-Semitism defenders have logged on. They show how much they care about Jews now and how much regret they have for the Holocaust by fully backing Israel's own Holocaust while arresting Jews in Germany who are protesting this policy. Yeah, exactly like the Labour Party. We're going to show how serious we are about anti-Semitism by purging left-wing Jews out of our party. You're welcome, everybody. It's really fucked. It's really, really bizarre. Arresting Jews like it's the 1930s. Yeah, PM Trio, and I see you can look at like. You can look at a map of Germany and you can still see the line is, and like the way that, like, people in the East have been completely screwed over by this whole process, and deindustrialization, unemployment, like every major factor. You can see there's this huge difference between the West and the East still, and the rise of the far right. It's amazing that people look at Germany or these, like, former Soviet republics and they say, "Oh, conveniently in all these former Soviet republics, the rise of the far right has happened. Oh, isn't that convenient?" Trying to draw some link between the socialism and the far right. And it's like, yes, the places where the right was actively suppressed and were overthrown and destroyed and economically devastated. So the left is destroyed, the people that were suppressing these right-wing interests. And there's this deindustrialization that takes place, huge economic devastation that takes place, and lo and behold, all these right-wing parties are now dominating in all these regions in East Germany and elsewhere. What a crazy outcome. And people really, like, are not able to make that connection. Really, the lesson they learn from that is, like, look how bad communism is. Look at all these former Soviet republics. The far right is just, like, thriving. Yeah, no shit. That's the whole point. That's exactly why they wanted to destroy the socialist project in the first place. Exactly why they wanted to dismantle the project so they could thrive again. We're all looking for the guy that did this. That's right. Jesus Christ. How do we support left-wing Jews? Well, I think we support left-wing Jews by like continuing to fight the same fight and refuse to compromise with this and refuse to compromise with this bullshit fake like anti-Semitism accusation which just gets hurled around to anyone that doesn't support Israeli occupation and apartheid and genocide. And we continue to uphold like Jewish values, like actual Jewish values, like humanity, peace, prosperity, socialism. These are Jewish values, and I'm proud to uphold these values along with anyone, no matter what culture they are, what background they are. These are central Jewish values, and we need to continue to uphold and defend those. What Jewish values are not, in my opinion, a non-Jewish person, what Jewish values are not are apartheid, exploitation, murder, theft, colonialism. Those are not Jewish values. In the same way that like Christian values, so-called Christian values, have been co-opted as well in the United States. And the same people that support Christian values are like hunting immigrants and refugees on the border. Anyway, let's continue with this. This is like a really interesting legal sort of explanation of some of this ICJ activity. Let's get through this because there's more stuff there's more UN speeches and stuff that I would like to take a look at as well.
Point out, she came out of the State Department. She's the head of the International Court of Justice, but she is no longer the head of the Court of Justice. But it was under her, and it was her reading of the preliminary decision around South Africa bringing its genocide case to the court. If you can talk about who's the new head of the court. And then I want to ask you about what just happened in Israel, in the Knesset, voting not to expel Ofer Kasef, the lawmaker who's a member of the Hadash party, supporting the genocide case against Israel at the ICJ. I just wanted to play a clip of the Knesset member Kasif speaking to Democracy Now! About facing expulsion, which didn't happen.
They want me and my friends to shut up. They don't want us to raise our voice against any kind of violence, because as I said a million times, as someone who continuously for years objected and opposed the Israeli occupation and siege against the Palestinian people, I said explicitly that even the crimes of the siege and the occupation cannot and will never justify the massacre committed by Hamas. We added that the criminal massacre by Hamas cannot justify the massacre and assault of Israel on Gaza, in which around 30,000 people are already dead, were killed. The vast majority, more than 70%, are innocent civilians, around 10,000 children.
So that's a member of the Knesset who remains so because they lost the vote to expel him, Ofer Kasef. And if you can respond to the new president, Nawaf Salam, who's replacing Joan Donahue.
As you said, Judge Nawaf Salam, who's a Lebanese judge, he has been a member of the court since February 2018, and newly elected as president of the court since 6th of February 2024. He is now the president of the court. But if you allow me, whether him or the American judges before the ICJ, they don't serve as agents of their state of nationality. They serve as independent judges who provide their personal views about international law and the interpretation of international law after hearing the positions of the states. So it is not in a way usual to presume that because of the nationality of the president of the court, that the position will be aligned with the foreign policy of the state of that judge. That is not the case, whether American or Lebanese or any other nationality of the president of the court. It is presumed, and the presumption is of their professional way of work and deliver on their mandate in accordance with the law. As to the voting to expel Ofer, the member of Knesset, it also, in my view, it shows you how radicalized Israeli society has become. So even the very tiny minority that you have where Israeli Knesset members are calling for the end of the occupation or calling for the bare minimum of human decency, that is a ceasefire, the rest of Knesset members from the Israeli members are mostly against that, and such tiny minority of those who call for Palestinian rights are often attacked, and as you said, there was an attempt to even remove him from the Knesset. And I think it's very telling to see also how supportive Israeli society has been in the genocide against the Gaza Strip. Amy, we need not to forget that right before the war, the Israeli society mobilized hundreds of thousands in the streets because of Netanyahu's plan to attack the judiciary or to minimize their authority in reviewing government's decision. But when it comes to Palestinians who are being oppressed, who are only a few meters away, the Israeli society somehow is unable to mobilize or call for the end of the occupation. So in a way, it seems
What's
that
the numbers of people that
the
support?
Israeli society has been radicalized into believing
The people that
for
support
them
or
to
want it
enjoy
to
the
be even go
privileges
even
of
farther.
this apartheid regime,
What's it, like
they
90%?
don't mind the Palestinians being oppressed. And unfortunately, the foreign policy of states that claim to be friends to Israel, I think, have contributed profoundly to such radicalization, simply because they've been ensuring impunity for Israel and Israeli war criminals who have been committing crimes for the past decades. So I think, in a way, the reason that we have such extreme government at the moment, one of the most extreme and right-wing in the history of Israel, which has ministers who are proudly self-described as Islamophobic and homophobes and fascists and racist ministers like Ben Gvir and Smotrich, is a result of, in my view, of the U.S. and European foreign policy ensuring that Israel enjoys an exceptional treatment, that Israel is untouchable. It enjoys prevailing impunity where Israel can commit crimes, but no one is held accountable.
Ahmed, I'm so sorry that, well, when we last spoke, you'd already lost some 60 members of your family born and raised in Gaza. You are. And I wanted to just ask in this 30 seconds.
That's insane.
About Benny Gantz's
It's crazy when you hear
comments,
things like that from
part
people
of
that
the
are
War
from Gaza.
Council, saying
Oh, by the way, I know you've lost
hostages
dozens of
are
family
not home
members
by Ramadan, which is like March 10th, the fighting will
over the last
continue
few months.
everywhere, including Rafah.
Yeah, well, it shows you also the character and the behavior of Israel. Israel is behaving like a pariah, is behaving like a rogue state, is not listening to anyone, is not listening to its closest allies. Israel needs to have the humility to understand that the Palestinian people are free people, are not colonial subjects. They're entitled to their rights, and Israel at some point will need to sit and listen with seriousness to the and consideration to the aspiration of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people, Amy, are not asking for a favor. They're asking for their unalienable basic human rights. And I think the word for long has misunderstood the Palestinians. We're not even asking. We're demanding those rights. We're entitled to those rights, regardless of what Israel think about that.
Ahmed Abou-Foul, we want to thank you for being with us, Legal Research and Advocacy Officer at the Palestinian human rights organization Al-Haq, speaking to us from The Hague.
Here's this South African lawyer's speech. from these hearings at the ICJ?
South Africa's foreign policy has always favored a two-state solution. The prevailing conditions suggest that unless such an approach deals with the inequitable offering of land to Palestinians, the dismantling of all the illegal settlements, the rights
It's
of
just never
return
gonna
to
happen
all
at this point,
Palestinian
the settlements.
refugees, such a solution may solidly lead to the disenfranchisement of the indigenous people of Palestine and concretize the prevailing injustices brought about by decades
The indigenous
of
people there
apartheid
are from
settler
fucking
colonialism.
Long Island or whatever.
A just solution for all who legally qualify to live in historical Palestine would need to be negotiated with the assistance of the international community. The inordinate delay in achieving a fair and just settlement has resulted in an unending cycle of violence. A clear legal characterization of the nature of Israel's regime over the Palestinian people can only assist in remedying the ongoing delay in achieving a just settlement. In this regard, on the legal questions placed before the courts by the United Nations General Assembly in Resolution 77/247 of 30 December 2022, we wish to make the following submissions. South Africa cannot overstate the significance of this advisory opinion for the Palestinian people, more especially the legal characterization of the situation of occupation and the imposition of the system of racial oppression and apartheid, which have unconscionably been permitted to continue for far too long. The occupation alone has persisted for 56 years. As the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories explained in 2022, the occupation by Israel has been conducted in profound defiance of international law and hundreds of United Nations resolutions, with scant pushback from the international community. Consequently, Mr. President, that defiance by Israel has already led to the killing of tens of thousands of Palestinians, including an estimated 30,000 killed in the past 4 months alone. These are not mere statistics, Mr. President. They are flesh and blood of the Palestinian people.
What does South
Therefore,
Africa
we
know
must
about
ask,
this? What does Algeria
when
know
will
about this?
Israel's decades-long
It's not a coincidence the countries that are
for
bringing forth these
widespread and
charges.
systematic human rights violations and violations of peremptory norms of international law end, if not now? Over the past 136 days,
What does South
the
Africa and
world has
Algeria know
watched
about apartheid
in
and
horror
colonization?
daily the relentless attacks on
Maybe
Gaza,
they need to sit this one out.
the ferocity and violence of Israel's latest military campaign against Gaza, and its flouting of international law, including an order of this court, which was handed down on 26 January 2024, is the clearest indication that Israel considers itself unrestrained in its actions against Palestinians. Its actions recur with even more depravity and bloodshed, being of such a serious nature as to lead this court to find them plausibly genocidal. I remind the court that it is in our recent submissions before it, in the hearings for the indication of provisional measures in the application of the Convention and Prevention of and Punishment of the crime of genocide in the Gaza Strip in South Africa versus Israel, South Africa underscored how Israel's ongoing acts and omissions in Gaza form part of a continuum of illegal acts perpetrated by it against Palestinian people since the 1948 Nakba.
It's nuts that the initial pushback against South Africa was that their country did what Israel is doing and they should clean up their history first. And I'm like, they did. You then took in all their criminals and refused to extradite them. Not only that, but through international financial institutions like the IMF, ensured that after the apartheid government was overthrown, the new South African government couldn't actually engage in any meaningful land reform that they wanted to, which is why you still have the situation decades later in South Africa where white farmers own most of the land still, which is exactly what all that populist anger and all the white genocide bullshit is about. You still have this system in place where these white landowners and farmers are incredibly powerful and have disproportionately control all the land and the wealth. And the reason that is because of the IMF. The IMF prevented Mandela and South Africa from meaningfully engaging in any land reform or any of those kinds of economic policies that they wanted to, because they were on the hook because the apartheid government had taken billions of dollars of IMF loans, and the apartheid government was on the post-apartheid government was on the hook for these billions of dollars of loans, so they couldn't engage in their economic program that they wanted to. Yeah, the only thing with the Boers is that they're fighting the British Empire, so it's like there's no real good guy in that conflict. Yeah, someone says land reform and the CIA agent somewhere gets a headache without knowing why. As I've joked about before, that's the thing. When you say those words, land reform, which we need in Canada as well. We need land reform in Canada as well. But when you say that, it's what causes the CIA guys to get the Kill Bill sirens.
And since then, the 1967 occupation.
See, land reform and someone gets Havana syndrome. That's what it's all about. That's what the Havana syndrome is all about.
Is now the subject of this matter before the court.
There is no directed energy weapon. It's just someone said land reform, and all these CIA and State Department people got headaches immediately.
Mr. President, the Palestinian cause is one which
land
resonates
reform and
strongly
nationalization.
with the people of South Africa.
You can't do it. You're not allowed to.
The Palestinian struggle invokes mournful memories of our own struggle against apartheid, segregation and oppression. Ours is an experience aptly referred to by the United Nations Security Council in 1980 as a crime against the conscience and dignity of mankind, and as being incompatible with the rights and dignity of man. It is not without a measure of irony that one notes that this painful experience of our past has enabled South Africa to make a significant contribution to the development of international law on apartheid. From this experience, a universal legal prohibition.
Emperor's New Groove. I will probably be playing, but not till later tonight, because I got to do parenting after I finish and after school and everything, and I got to do a podcast I think as well. So I'll probably be hell diving later, but probably not till later this evening.
Of its practice emerged in the form of a peremptory norm.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old
Parenting
Rob
first,
to
liberty
talk
later.
you through all this.
I hope he knows that I'm not contributing to the war effort in the Malevelon Creek system. I hope he knows what kind of sacrifice that is. Dick Pendarren, thanks so much for 6 months of Tier 1. I appreciate it a lot. And if anyone else wants to support the program today, if you can, please subscribe or gift subs or bits or tips or whatever it is. As you know, folks, I want to continue this speech. I don't want to interrupt it with this pitch here. I'll probably do a stronger pitch later, but if you do enjoy this program, if you feel like there's been some decent counter-programming to what our mainstream media is talking about when it comes to Palestine or any other issue, Ukraine or what have you, please subscribe if you can. It really helps. It really helps me out. It's the only way that I'm able to continue doing this show each and every day, folks. Hello, Strong Bad Emails. I bet Strong Bad Emails would appreciate a gifted sub, actually. I know new user Strong Bad Emails would like to be able to use Rob emotes on Twitch and post little emotes and images of my face on this platform. And that's the kind of benefit you get when you become a subscriber to TRRS. You can post tiny little Rob images.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
That's okay, Emperor's New Groove. I appreciate all the support that anyone's able to give. I really do. Thank you very much, Pathogen, for the gifted sub. Does your son tell his classmates that his dad is a renowned hell diver? I did show him that I was streaming it last night. I think he thinks that was pretty cool. So maybe he did. He very well may have
good old
mentioned
Rob
that.
to talk you through all this.
Pelicans, thank you very much for the gifted sub as well.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And Butt Nerd...
TRRS Friendship Triangle.
Valued community member Butt Nerd 69. Thanks for the 10 months. Thank you. I'm going to continue the speech, though. I don't want to interrupt this speech and then pause for subs for 10 straight minutes. Let's continue with this.
An international crime. The norm against apartheid has become one of the most cited norms of jus cogens. We as South Africans sense, see, hear, and feel to our core the inhumane discriminatory policies and practices of the Israeli regime as an even more extreme form of the apartheid that was institutionalized against black people in my country. Coincidentally, from the year 1948, and which lasted until 1994.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Dick Penderin, thanks for the 5 gifted subs. Dick Penderin, I really appreciate that. Thank you for that.
Reverend Archbishop Desmond
Elite.
Tutu wrote the following, open quote, "Many black South Africans have traveled to the occupied West Bank and have been appalled by Israeli roads built for Jewish settlers that West Bank Palestinians are denied access to, and by Jewish-only colonies built on Palestinian land in violation of international law. Black South Africans and others around the world have seen the 2010 Human Rights Watch report, which describes the two-tier system of laws, rules and services that Israel operates for the two populations in areas in the West Bank under its exclusive control, which provide preferential services, development and benefits for Jewish settlers while imposing harsh conditions on Palestinians. This, in my book, is apartheid. It is untenable." End quote. That was the position already 14 years ago, since 2010. Since then, the situation of the occupied Palestinian population has worsened exponentially.
Wrong number.
With the reality of apartheid becoming so obviously explicit as to now being recognized not only by South African and Palestinian victims of apartheid themselves.
I was actually speaking French that whole time. You couldn't hear what I was speaking French. There was a wrong number there. But yeah, Emperor's New Groove. That's the thing. It's like, yeah, my dad's a streamer. Oh yeah, he like streams games and stuff, and someone's going to tune in. It's like, so about that Stalin guy, let's talk about him. I'm just saying that sometimes he got a few things right. That's all. Is that a crime? Is it a crime to talk about that?
But by the broader international community, including both Israeli and international human rights organizations.
Yeah, that's true, PM Trio. There's been no effort whatsoever to slow down or to even indicate in any way that they are interested in stopping. Feels like how the Nazis stepped up the pace after Stalingrad, for sure. Exactly. And then that's really disturbing implications about what that could possibly mean. It's like our time is limited. Our timeline is shortening here. So we step up the violence, step up the ethnic cleansing, increase the genocide. If anything, the rhetoric has been even more genocidal. Yeah, well, like they said, no one's going to stop us. Not the Hague, not anybody. Yeah, absolutely, carrier wave. Like really disturbing implications and like the historical analogy as well.
Moreover, it is clear that Israel's illegal occupation is also being administered in breach of the prohibition of the crime of apartheid. It is indistinguishable from settler colonialism, which has no place in the 21st century.
No.
Israeli apartheid must end. Palestine, the last unfulfilled sacred trust of civilization,
being built,
for whom the international community bears responsibility, must now be fulfilled. The Palestinian people must be permitted to exercise their inalienable right to self-determination. Mr. President, South Africa bears a special obligation both to its own people and the international community to ensure that wherever the egregious and offensive practices of apartheid occur, these must be called out for what they are and brought to an immediate end, and that the perpetrators of such egregious breaches of parental norms of international law be held accountable. In the construction of wall case, this court held that the construction of the wall being built by Israel, the occupying power, in the occupied Palestinian territory, including in and around East Jerusalem, and its associated regime, are contrary to international law, and that Israel is under an obligation to dismantle forthwith the structure therein situated, and to repeal or render ineffective forthwith all legislative and regulatory acts relating thereto. Despite that 19-year-old finding by the court, today Palestinians in the West Bank, including many in East Jerusalem, continue to be contained behind a segregating wall. They continue to be subjected to discriminatory land zoning and planning policies, punitive and administrative house demolitions, and violent Israeli army incursions into their villages, towns, and cities, and refugee camps, including Area A, which is supposed to be under full Palestinian control. Palestinians continue to be subjected to routine violent Israeli raids on their homes, with thousands of adults and children being subjected to unlawful arbitrary arrests by Israeli soldiers in the dead of night, and indefinitely renewable internment without trial, known as euphemistically as administrative detention, and a dual legal system pursuant to which Palestinians, including Palestinian children, are tried under military legislation by military judges, often themselves illegal settlers.
Those are hostages.
In Israeli military courts, without basic protection of international humanitarian and human rights law, while Israeli settlers living illegally in the same territory are subject to an entirely different legal regime and tried in Israeli civilian courts with full access to due process. Separately, Palestinians in Gaza have lived in a sealed-off enclave, fragmented and segregated from the West Bank, and subjected by Israel to regression, sustained closure, and seized. Palestinian refugees and exiles in the diaspora are systematically denied their right to return to their homes. Apartheid Israel discriminates against and fragments all Palestinian people to ensure the maintenance of Israeli Jewish domination. South Africa beseeches this court to examine the institutionalized regime of discriminatory laws, policies, and practices applied by Israel along the definition of the crime of apartheid, and to find that Israel subjects Palestinians to what constitutes an apartheid regime. The clear legal characterization of the nature of Israel's regime over the Palestinian people can only assist in remedying the ongoing delay in achieving a just settlement, a delay which perpetually conflagrates the cycle of violence. As I speak, and for each of the past 136 days, the world is witnessing in Gaza an assault that is unprecedented in speed and severity, violating the most basic precepts of the right to life and the survival of a population. The international community's unwillingness to hold Israel accountable for its policies and practices, and its failure to ensure the immediate, unconditional and total withdrawal of Israeli troops and an immediate end to Israel occupation and apartheid in Palestine, including Gaza, the West Bank and East Jerusalem, emboldens Israel to cross a further threshold, namely to commit the crime of crimes, genocide.
Pretty amazing. So there's two kind of ongoing international institutions that are engaging in some important activity today, both at the ICJ. So there's all these different nations, including South Africa, making this case to the ICJ. And there's this UN resolution as well.
It's the second day of hearings into the legality of Israel's 56-year occupation of Palestinian territory, and it's underway at the United Nations highest court. After Palestine put forward its case on Monday, 51 other countries are presenting their arguments over the rest of the week. The representative of South Africa compared the Israeli occupation to apartheid. He said the ICJ's hearings could help bring an end to a system of racial oppression that had no place in the modern world.
South Africa cannot overstate the significance of this advisory opinion for the Palestinian people, more especially the legal characterization of the situation of occupation and the imposition of the system of racial oppression and apartheid, which have unconscionably been permitted to continue for far too long. The occupation alone has persisted for 56 years. As the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories explained in 2022, the occupation by Israel has been conducted in profound defiance of international law. And hundreds...
So this... But I think there's more statements from...
Who are being treated like objects that could be thrown away.
Saudi Arabia. I think Saudi Arabia is...
defends this obscene
interesting. An interesting case here to talk about their complaints, to say the least.
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia firmly rejects this twisted logic. Israel's actions in laying waste to the Gaza Strip, killing and maiming tens of thousands of innocent civilians, depriving them of food, water, and the basic means.
Let's just say I don't think, regardless of what the argument is, I don't think Saudi Arabia has as much credibility as, say, Algeria or South Africa to talk about this like colonization and genocide that's been ongoing for a number of reasons. Their own human rights violations aside, their own genocidal campaign on Yemen. Their own status is basically like a U.S. client state, similar to Israel. It is interesting to analyze their kind of role in all this, though, too, and the whole like the idea that some kind of Saudi-Israeli normalization process was the key to kind of like sewing up this series of alliances, and the way that that's been totally scuttled. I don't think they have a ton of credibility on this case. It's still interesting to hear the arguments, though. Doing genocide is very bad, except south of us when it's very good. Exactly. Although, I mean, one thing to point out, like they were talking about, they have ended that campaign on Yemen, even with the U.S., which the whole time was doing. The whole time, the U.S., similar to what it does with Israel, when it came to Saudi's campaign in Yemen, the U.S. was saying, oh, there's just nothing we can do, and Canada was saying this as well, as we're continually sending arms and supporting them while they engage in this brutal war. That war is now over, though, and interestingly enough, while the U.S. was saying constantly, "Oh, if only there was something we could do to stop the violence," the U.S. was desperately trying to keep it going. The U.S. was desperately trying to convince Saudi Arabia to continue that. So you see how their role as this like benign nation with no power, no influence. As soon as that started slipping away, and the Saudis were ending the campaign, the U.S. was the ones trying to get them to continue it. What's this from Alberta Advantage? Oh, God. We'll put that on after.
While displacing virtually the entire population of the 2.3 million.
Yeah, it seems like they're just trying to quiet discontent in their own country. That seems like a big part of it. Like you said, with the actual Saudi population is mostly pro-Palestine. And then the ruling class, which is very much beholden to U.S. interests, are trying to walk this line between not being overthrown by their citizenry and still maintaining some kind of credibility while also not really doing much to materially support Palestine.
Are not justified under any circumstances. Israel's actions have severely dehumanized the Palestinian population, treating them as dispensable objects rather than human beings. These disgraceful acts, which have brought about formal accusation before this esteemed court that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian population.
Let's join Steph Vasson outside the International Court of Justice, who's been following the day's events. Hi, Steph. Obviously, many highlights, but some very strong points made by Saudi Arabia and South Africa.
Well, the second day of this landmark case at the Peace Palace in The Hague is just wrapping up. And if I can say, you know, the 10 countries that we heard were very much agreeing. We heard some very, very strong statements here in this building accusing Israel.
We need an Arab Spring 2.0 that doesn't get co-opted by the U.S. like the Arab Spring did.
Is simply unlawful. And the countries have
like the Arab Spring overthrows Mubarak in Egypt, for example, and then they end up with just another U.S. puppet in place afterwards, a few years later, who's also not doing anything to meaningfully pressure Israel on this, despite what their own citizens want. It's arguable that MBS wants to distance himself away from the religious aspect of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, but that's not exactly easy when you're literally the steward of two of the most holy cities in Islam. Yeah, that is a little bit tricky. It's a tricky line to maintain there, I would say. They want normalization with Israel so bad, they just know it won't fly with their populations. They have to play this game. Yeah, that is kind of what it seems like.
Brought forward also things like colonial apartheid system, second-class citizens, some really harsh words against the treatment of the Palestinian people, saying also that this occupation has to stop, these settlements have to be dismantled, and there has to be reparations paid to the Palestinian people for their suffering. And we heard also countries like the Netherlands and Belgium, who have had very strong ties and still have very strong ties with Israel, also condemning Israel and really stressing the right of the self-determination for the Palestinian people. So all in all, a very strong statement coming here from the International Court of Justice.
And of course, Steph, you know, despite statements, what this is a court, and it requires legal argument as well. And that's very specific when it comes to the term of occupation, which you've just mentioned. And it's that very occupation that's actually in the dock right now.
Absolutely. What the word occupation, right? The whole debate is about, is this a permanent occupation? Basically, a permanent occupation is simply annexation. And Israel has long argued that this is a temporary. But we heard legal experts saying there's no way that this is temporary because it's already happening for 57 years. And there's also no intention of Israel to stop it. And Israeli officials have also made very clear that they have no intention to leave these territories, and they also have no intention for a Palestinian state. We have to stress, though, that this is a case which will provide an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice to the UN General Assembly. So it's a non-binding advisory opinion, but still, the conclusion of the court, which we only expect in a few months from now, will definitely have a serious impact on the international perception and also the status and the image of Israel. It has a strong moral authority, so to say.
Step button there for it.
This is like, what were we just talking about? UN ambassador to the UN after vetoing a Gaza ceasefire resolution.
We intend to do this the right way so that we can create the right conditions for a safer, more peaceful future. And we will continue to actively engage in the hard work of direct diplomacy on the ground until we reach a final solution.
Excuse me? What was that last part? All that sounded okay. All of that sounded okay up until that last part there, except for the bullshit about like, oh, this ceasefire was not good. We don't want this. We want an even better
guy, Rob Russo,
ceasefire.
some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Yeah, some interesting phrasing. Hello, Majority Report. Hello, what is up? Majority Report, it is nice to see you. How is it going? How is the Majority Report stream today? I hope it was good. Welcome in, Raiders. Please smash the follow button if you can. It's me, Rob. It's nice to have you here. Hello. We were just looking at this, the U.S. ambassador to the UN.
Have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Anon, thank you very much for the gifted sub. Thank you, Anon. Hello, Adrienne. How's it going? Thank you, Anon, for that. And if anyone else wants to support the channel, you can do so. That's also very much appreciated if you can. Let's just hear that one more time, though. So setting aside the whole bullshit, being like, oh, yeah, we vetoed this ceasefire resolution because we want even better peace. We want an even better ceasefire. This ceasefire resolution was interrupting our peace process, so we had to veto that. And listen to what she says.
We intend to do this the right way so that we can create the right conditions for a safer, more peaceful future. And we will continue to actively engage in the hard work of direct diplomacy on the ground until we reach a final solution.
Until we reach a final solution. Strong Bad Emails, you got a sub. You got someone hooked you up with the gift sub already. You can now use Rob emotes at any time. Yeah, seriously, Lioness, like what the fuck? And we were just talking about that. We were just talking about how it seems like it's escalated their actions. It's escalated their activities. They're even more genocidal, like the language, the rhetoric, and the actual actions. And then the U.S. vetoes their, and it's comparing that to the Nazis after Stalingrad when it looked like they were losing. Escalated the Holocaust, escalated the genocide. That looks exactly like what's happening now. And then you have the UN ambassador from America using that explicit language. Yeah, she's not ad-libbing that shit, for sure. Hey, lady, if our government keeps messing around there won't be any Palestinians left. And that almost seems like the final solution that they're referencing. Let's look at this absolute fucking worm. I don't think I can watch this for 51 minutes, but there's, the State Department briefing as U.S. vows to veto Gaza ceasefire proposal in UN. So let's hear more from this absolutely genocidal fucking sick person. Look at the big shit-eating grin. Yeah, good. Let's get started with some fun. Let's do a fun one.
You think I don't want to get on with my day as much as you do?
This is a man that's like overseeing and justifying and supporting genocide currently. This is when you tell a liberal that they just killed 12,000 little kids in Palestine. That's the face that they make. A fucking demon working in the U.S. State Department. A Nazi. Let's just call them let's call it what it is. These people are Nazis. More dead kids. Only 12,000, you're saying? Let's see if we can pump up that number. That's what this man's thinking. This sick man. This sick individual. Israel has the right to murder children. That's right. That's what this guy believes. Absolute sicko.
Let me... No, thank you. Let's start with some opening comments. As we mark 2 years this week since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine...
And then the first thing he fucking mentions is Ukraine. It's just a simple blood sacrifice for the good of the market somehow. Exactly. Have you seen what this is doing to the line? All these dead kids? And then the first thing he did, this is a press conference after the U.S. vetoes a ceasefire resolution at the UN yet again. And the first thing that they say is like, Russia bad. Oh, Ukraine. Again, you don't have to like Russia. You don't have to like Putin. You don't have to like the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I've talked a lot about that, how we played a large role in provoking that and prolonging it and intensifying it. You don't have to like any of that stuff, though. The reality is, he's talking about 2 years into this Russian special military operation, as they call it, in Ukraine, has led to less civilian deaths in 2 years. And any civilian death is still horrifying. But there's been less civilian deaths in Ukraine in 2 years than there's been in Palestine in the last 4 months. That's just the reality. That's a fact. That's the facts of the numbers. And so they vetoed this ceasefire resolution at the UN, and then they're talking about how bad Russia is. No, you're worse. You don't have to, again, you can say, yeah, Russia bad, Putin bad. You're worse. America is worse. Israel is worse. Objectively, measurably.
The quality of Putin's regime is increasingly evident both at home and abroad. The weakness and rot at the heart of the system that Putin has built was confirmed not only by Alexei Navalny's death last week, but also by the fact that Russia detained close to 400 people over the weekend just for mourning his passing. The Kremlin has poisoned Navalny.
We haven't even brought up the Navalny thing on this show. It hasn't even come up. Because guess what? You know what? I don't know if this is like offensive or spicy or whatever. I don't care. I don't give a shit about Navalny. I don't care about what happens to some racist U.S. puppet. I don't care.
Imprisoned him unjustly, kept him in harsh conditions, and
Who
denied
care?
him medical care. It is the Russian government that is responsible for Navalny's death while in detention. And now, in any other society, in a free democratic society, we would see openness and transparency as his family seeks more information about their beloved son, husband, and father.
What do we think would happen in America if, like, America freaks out so much about Russian interference into their politics, right? And what does this Russian interference look like? Facebook memes, whatever it is, like Trump. You want to blame every single thing that happens bad, that everything bad that happens in the country. This is because of Russian interference. Russia is going into these online discourses, and they're widening these gaps, and they're supporting all these these people. And like, this is what we have a nonstop freak out about Russian interference. What if, like, let's do a hypothetical thought experiment and say, what if Russia was actively, openly backing a political candidate that was actively like trying to destabilize the government, and they're like actively promoting this person. They're making documentaries. Let's say it's me, okay, and I'm not American, obviously, but if it was in the Canadian version, and they're putting out this Russian documentary, Rob, about how much a hero I am, you know, and constantly promoting me, and I'm out there being like, yes, I'm trying to overthrow the government on behalf of Russia. That's what I'm doing. You know, do we think people would be treated nicely? Do we think our government would just be like, yeah, no problem, whatever? No, keep trying to overthrow the government at the behest of the hostile foreign power that's obviously and openly backing you, right? Maybe this is a bad example because you're all agreeing with that. You're all agreeing with my quest to overthrow the government. So maybe that's a bad example. But like, what do we think that do we think the U.S. government would treat that person nicely? If there was some marginal political figure that Russia was holding up as being this brave dissident trying to overthrow the evil bourgeois dictatorship of the United States, you know, they're actively promoting this person and saying, yeah, we support them, we're promoting them. Or like a Guaido is another example, like a Juan Guaido type. And Russia was making documentaries about this person and talking about in their media and how they're being persecuted by the U.S. America would just say, oh yeah, no problem. Please keep it up. Keep it up. Ask libs how they feel about Assange. Yeah, that's a good analogy. I saw pro-Navalny posters being posted around Vancouver. Imagine spending time to do that. With everything going on in the world, that's the thing that you've chosen to make a big issue about, even just in Vancouver. No, don't organize around housing. Don't organize around Indigenous rights. I'm going to go and I really care about this reactionary U.S. puppet. I mean, what happens to him? Who cares? We've assassinated people for less. I mean, even people like in the civil rights movement that were assassinated, like Malcolm X, like MLK, like Fred Hampton, they were all accused of being like Russian stooges anyways, despite having no actual evidence of that. This is a guy who's actively backed by America. You have American powerful politicians talking about how great he is and how he's trying to overthrow the current regime that's there. And we're the Ferguson organizers, like, Jesus Christ. And we're really surprised that the government is like, hey, this guy seems like no good. This guy seems like he's up to no good. He's literally actively engaged in a campaign to overthrow the government at the behest of the United States of America. I can't believe this guy wasn't treated like a VIP. What a shock. What a surprise. You know, we complain so much about Russian interference, but when we actually back dissident political figures actively engaged in trying to destabilize and overthrow an enemy government, and we're surprised that that government then does something about that. Like, this is the ultimate, like, Western mentality bullshit. We can literally actively and try to overthrow your government, but the moment you do something about it, we're going to talk about how authoritarian you are. You know, it's just preposterous. Even this whole argument that Navalny represented the people. He represented the people, and Putin is the one. He's the dictator. You know, the people support Navalny. No, the people don't actually support Putin. And again, whether you like the guy or not, look at like Russia's geopolitical positioning. Look at their economic stability when Putin took power versus right now. Whether you like the guy or not, It's just objectively true that there's been this massive increase. They moved away and improved from that decade of humiliation, 10 or 12 years of abject humiliation on the part of the West. They've restored their economy. Their economy seems to be fully like sanction proof now. Their economy is stronger than ever, despite the fact that the U.S. has tried to do everything in their power, along with its allies like Canada, to destroy their economy with sanctions and all this stuff that they enacted around the time of the Ukraine invasion. They're once again viewed as this like respected and feared world power. This is just objectively true. That's what has happened since he took power to now. And we really don't think the average person in Russia is like, yeah, like they noticed that too. And maybe they don't like the guy either. But probably, I would imagine, a lot of people in Russia are perfectly happy to have that guy in charge rather than some U.S.-backed puppet. They remember what happened when a U.S. puppet was running the country the last time. How did that go for Russia? How did that work out for Russia when there was a U.S.-backed puppet that overthrew their entire economic and political and social system and put all these like pro-free market policies in place? How did that work out for the average person in Russia? It was an absolute disaster by every objective metric that you can measure these things. So this idea that like, oh, the Russian people, they wanted Navalny. It's like, no, that's actually not true. Like, and it's very easy to determine this. The average person is like, no, actually, we don't want some U.S. puppet put back in charge of Russia after our sovereignty has been restored, after our economic stability has been restored, after our sort of like geostrategic position has been restored. Yeah, let's put another U.S. puppet back in charge, please. We're just begging for the U.S. to come and overthrow the situation, put another puppet back in charge. Like, please, come on. Am I wrong? Like, tell me when I'm telling lies here. Yeah, and to say nothing of the fact that Putin was America's puppet for some time. And as he pointed out in that interview with Tucker Carlson, he tried to get let into the club. They wanted to be part of NATO. They were like, fine, can we be part of the international community now? And we literally said, no, you can't. Fuck you. Navalny dying in Russia is a PR loss for Putin. There's no world where he has him killed just for the fuck of it. That's not how real politics works. Yeah, who knows what happened? Like, if people are just saying that Putin had him killed, like, it doesn't seem like that was even necessary. Like you said, it makes him more of a tragic figure, more of a martyr, whatever, to do that. I don't think really anyone cares, though. Honestly. So if you're wondering why that hasn't came up, that's why. I don't give a shit.
But of course, in Russia, openness and transparency remain in short supply. We saw further evidence of the Putin regime's brutality and disregard for human life in Advika this weekend, where Ukrainian citizens bravely tried to hold off Putin's illegal invasion while facing rationed ammunition.
Yeah, that's true, Johnny. I'm not discounting that that's a possibility, that Putin did have him killed. It's certainly, he does have a history of doing just that.
It's clear than ever what the stakes are in Ukraine. Without more support from Congress, Ukraine will not be able to replenish its air defenses and ammunition supplies to help protect itself from
As much as I don't like the current government there, they've clearly built a stable system of elite and popular consensus that will be very difficult to shift, much less by a joker like Navalny. Yeah. People have, like, they've been talking for 2 years now about how Russia's on the brink of collapse, and it's actually the exact opposite. Didn't he have like a chronic illness? I don't know, probably. It's also possible that he just said the wrong thing to a bunkie. I don't think Russian prisons are particularly nice places to spend time in. You know? Yeah, and just, again, there's lots of things that the Russian government does that I find fucking gross. One thing that I think is we've been pointing out, though, is this like persistent shift in the geopolitical landscape, and the fact that Russia and China have formed this alliance have really changed the landscape for countries around the world that want to get out from under the thumb of the United States and Western hegemony. Russian prisons are still better than American prisons. Well, per capita, there's less people. Like, there's less people in them. I don't think it's very nice, but I certainly don't think American prisons are nice either. In fact, I think even having knowledge of the American prison system, I think they're probably much more horrific than we even give it credit for.
Aggression. As the White House announced this morning, at President Biden's direction, we will be announcing a major sanctions package on Friday to hold Russia accountable for Navalny's
More sanctions. I'm sure they're just
actions over the course of the vicious and
petrified.
Brutal war they have waged in Ukraine for the past 2 years. We also renew our call for Congress to pass the National Security Supplemental Funding Bill, both to enable Ukraine and its people to defend against the ongoing invasion, and also to advance U.S. national security interests. It is critical that Congress act without further delay. With that, Matt.
Thanks. Before we get into the what you just talked about, I just want to get what you have to say about the detention of a U.S.-Russian dual national.
So, with respect to this most recent detention, we are aware of the case. We are seeking consular assistance that has not yet been granted. We're at limit what more we can say because of privacy laws, as I've discussed many times from this podium. And I will just say generally, as I think you are aware, Russia, when it comes to dual citizens of the United States and Russia, or dual citizens of any other country in Russia, Russia does not recognize dual citizenship, considers them to be Russian citizens first and foremost. And so oftentimes we have a difficult time getting consular assistance, but we will pursue it in all matters where a U.S. citizen is detained.
Okay. And then on the sanctions, why wait until Friday?
It takes time to put these sanctions packages together.
The other sanctions have been so successful. Maybe these are going to be the ones that cripple the Russian economy. These are the sanctions that are going to really show them what's what.
We are always looking to impose new sanctions as facts justify when we see sanctions evasion or activity moving to new areas. And
yeah, I know Pelicans. It's the way that we've contributed to Ukraine just completely being destroyed.
Okay.
If we cared about our client state, we could help them negotiate a peace deal so that the violence and the killing would stop.
Is the latest pretrial detention that he's been kept in for another 30 months. Excuse me, 30 days.
So,
yeah, it's happening to Israel's economy instead, and Western Europe.
Ambassador Tracy attended Evan's hearing and spoke to the press soon after. You may have seen her comments. We're disappointed but not surprised by the outcome of the hearing. As you've heard me say many times from this podium, the charges against him are baseless. Russia should immediately release Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan, and the United States will continue to work towards securing both of their freedom.
And just one other under Russia, Radio Free Europe. I don't know if you saw the Russian announcement in that, saying it's undesirable as an organization. Do you have any reaction on the Russian statement?
I don't have any specific reaction other than to say that you have seen Vladimir Putin oppose the free dissemination of information, the free press inside Russia, and unfortunately that seems to not surprisingly, but unfortunately not.
Unlike our free press here, which is run entirely by capitalist conglomerates.
Matt, can you say at all if the administration is going to use this EO that you guys issued in December that threatened basically penalties for financial institutions that help circumvent Russia's sanctions?
Yeah, how is Assange doing?
You mean with respect to our announcements that are coming on Friday? I certainly don't want to preview those. And I just say in general.
The announcements that are coming on Friday
on
that you
Friday,
guys have
that you would
made
like
public
me,
on Monday.
That you would like, it's Tuesday actually.
Tuesday.
But we made public that will be taking.
This is interesting, Johnny. In my opinion, this is exactly what the U.S. wanted, a completely destabilized nightmare country directly on the border of Russia and prevent any sort of European westward expansion of stable economic relations. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. When you have a destabilized, destroyed country rife with heavily armed neo-Nazis, that's a problem that's going to continue to be a problem for Russia for many years to come. You know? That was the whole thing that we talked about of like turning Ukraine into like Russia's Afghanistan and getting them bogged down in there. So now even if Ukraine does get destroyed and even if it is a completely destabilized, failed state, totally being sucked dry by Western multinational industries, overrun with heavily armed neo-Nazis, that creates a problem and a headache for Russia for years from now. Yeah, we haven't even reached the insurgency stage yet. And remember, I like that Yahoo News article that came out like 2 weeks before the invasion, talking about these CIA-trained stay-behind armies. I don't think the denazification objective is realistic. No, and as you see, there's been an explosion in that kind of ideology as a result of the invasion. What does the U.S. care if Ukraine becomes a bombed-out catastrophe? Well, that's it. And like that's why I've been so disgusted by people that are being like, that's how you support Ukraine. You know, that's, in my opinion, if you support Ukraine and you support Ukrainians and you don't want more Ukrainians to die, you should be talking about de-escalation and a peace deal. And if you don't support Ukrainians, argue for this war to just continue indefinitely and intensify indefinitely. And argue for Ukraine to just turn into this failed state, overrun with neo-Nazis and being completely emptied of all of its resources by American multinationals.
Taking that action, I don't want to preview what they will be, but as we had said, they will be a major sanctions package.
Right. Can I just ask a little bit on Ukraine, coming off the heels of Munich Security Conference, where a lot of European leaders and sort of various officials have tweeted their rather negative outlook about.
Don't you know that pushing for peace is actually a pro-war position? Well, again, it's the same twisted logic that they're talking about the UN. Oh, this UN ceasefire resolution was really interfering in the peace process. Like, it's the same mentality. Yeah, I know, Johnny. We're all waiting for 9/11 2 Azov edition. We all know it's coming. The question is when.
And Congress is on holiday until mid-March. What exactly is the administration planning? How to convince the speaker, whether you have a plan B if the supplementals prospects look pretty bleak?
So we will continue to engage with Congress to make clear that it is in the national security interests of the United States to pass this supplemental funding request. You heard the Secretary speak about this last week. One of the points he made is that when it comes to our security assistance to Ukraine, 90% of that money is actually spent here in the United States. It benefits American manufacturing. It benefits American technological development. So we will continue to make that case. But I think it's also the American people that make that case. If you look at the recent polls that came out, the American people overwhelmingly continue to support standing with Ukraine. And there were a number of members of Congress
being really open and honest about this lately. We heard from the economist lady, and we're hearing from the government, both the media and political
spheres. They heard directly from Ukrainian officials and from European officials how it is in the national security interests of Europe and also in our transatlantic national security interests. So we'll continue to make the case.
This whole idea that it's in our security interests to promote this conflict. They've used the language themselves when they talk about Iran arming these proxy groups, like these militias in Iraq, like the Houthis, like Hezbollah. And you heard Joe Biden himself say, if Iran's giving them the money, it's no different than like them carrying out the attacks. So through that logic, America has been attacking Russia for at least the last 2 years and longer. If you want to go back to the whole war on the Donbass that's been going on. So that promotes American security to be directly attacking this powerful geopolitical rival. It promotes our security by attacking, destabilizing, provoking this heavily nuclear armed geostrategic player on the global stage. That helps American security. That helps our security. That helps us have peace. Like, what the fuck?
Say, it's not just the United States that will continue to make the case. And I will say, as you have heard the Secretary say, there is no other magic plan that we can unveil to support Ukraine. Ukraine will continue to defend itself.
There is a magic plan. It's called having a peace deal.
Supplemental funding request passing Congress. That is without a doubt. You have seen them fight with bravery. You've seen them
The
fight
magic plan would be
with
taking the
skill
peace
and
deal that was on the table 2 years ago. That's the magic plan.
fully expect that they will continue to do so, and they will continue to make gains.
They're not
against
making
Russia,
gains.
as they have done in the Black Sea. But the situation will be very difficult. When you don't have the ammunition you need on the front lines, you're going to be vulnerable. And that's what we saw over the weekend with the loss.
Yeah, he's such a piece of
Avdiivka
shit,
and,
Weenus.
or Avdiivka. And so I think it's the facts on the ground that will continue to make the case to members of Congress why they need to act, and we hope they will.
Would you say that you still have some sort of confidence?
Well, Mag Carta. So for the last 10 years, America, Canada, and other countries have been pumping weapons into Ukraine. Okay, those weapons were being used in a war that was going on in that Donbass region. This is exactly what provoked the war in Ukraine. And now we're arming one side of that war, and we're giving them the weapons and the bombs and the bullets and the training which they're using to fight in this war. They're U.S. proxies. So Donbass is part of Russia. Well, there's many people that live there that would rather be part of Russia than this pro-Western, pro-EU Nazi government in Ukraine. Yeah. Do we care about those people, by the way? Do we care about those people at all? The sick irony is that whole region could have remained part of Ukraine if we hadn't provoked that conflict, if we hadn't intentionally armed this conflict and escalated this conflict to the point that Russia felt they needed to invade. It's only now, as a result, because that process has been like, we've gone along with that and created this whole conflict that has led to that point. So yes, they're like, as they've admitted themselves, they're a U.S. proxy. So yes, we've been arming and funding and send these groups and training them to fight war as a U.S. proxy. So yes, that's what we've been doing.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Dummy Dorco, thank you for that. Thank you for the gifted sub.
What Congress will do. What we will say and continue to represent is why it is in the national interest of the United States for it to pass this bill. Members of Congress will have to make their own assessments, and it continues to be our belief that if you brought this funding up for an up or down vote, it will pass the House, and that's what needs to happen.
Okay, I have some Gaza questions, but I'll let people ask questions.
Staying on Russia, Russian Supreme Court of Tatarstan today rejected also Kurmashov RFL reporter's request for house arrest. Let me get a quick reaction and we'll follow up on
that. We will continue to engage with the Russian government. This is another one another matter where they consider this to be a dual well, not a dual citizen. It's another matter of a dual citizen where they rejected that request. We'll continue to engage with the Russian government on this question, but I don't want to speak to the specific court matter.
I mean, yesterday marked 4 months of arrest, day before yesterday. Are you telling us that you're out of option here in terms of defending the U.S. citizen?
The safety and security of United States citizens overseas is always our first priority, and we always look to protect the safety and security of every United States citizen, whether they be in Russia or whether they be in any other country.
Is her designation of her arrest as wrongful, is it still on the table? Are you still considering?
I just don't want to make any kind of judgment about a wrongful detention determination. That is something that we always look at.
I don't see the point in debating whose territory belongs to who when the momentum of that war is clearly one-sided regardless of money going there or not. Yeah, I mean, we can debate all we want about who started the conflict and whether Russia needs to be held accountable for invading or whether the Euromaidan was a coup. Was it not a coup? It was a coup, as we know, but we can debate about that, whatever. The fact is, though, those regions are gone now. The Crimea is gone. The Crimea is not coming back. Those regions, now that Russia has spent the last 2 years getting that territory, that's gone now. There's no situation where that's going to be coming back. So that's just the reality. So you can accept that for just being the reality, or you can have this kind of stubborn viewpoint where you're like, no, that's not fair. That's not fair. Even if you want to deny our whole role in provoking that conflict and escalating it, okay. I don't agree with that, but okay. Even if you want to do that, though, and you say, no, that's not fair, you can't just take that territory. Well, that's what happened, though. It's gone. It's gone. So you might as well, if you care about peace, if you're against war and you don't want people to continue dying, just accept that reality. I'm not going to celebrate old school military conquest of lands. And that's like, it's a tragedy that any of this had to happen. You know, I would maybe dispute I don't know if that's what I would refer to it as, considering the ways that we did engage in activities that I think any country around the world would have viewed as being a threat to their security. When we're arming and funding these like militia groups in Ukraine, when we're helping overthrow the government to put in a pro-EU, pro-US government, when we want to turn their largest military base into a NATO base and aim nukes at the country, I don't think it should be that surprising that they viewed that as being a threat to their security. If we weren't involved in any way and Putin and Russia just invaded to just take the land because they wanted it, I would fully agree with that. But the fact is that we were involved, though. Did he say that all Americans, no matter where they are in prison, the government will do its best to get them back? Basically is what he said. If it is, then why won't they take care of us Americans? Yeah, to say nothing of the Americans in American prisons. They deserve it, though. That's how much we care about these political prisoners. If you're American and you're in jail, we're going to try and get you home. If you're an American and you're in American jail, you are fucked. We can't help you. No one can help you. Yeah, don't even get me started on the Palestinian Americans in Israel. Yeah. Or in Gaza. I mean, not even Palestinian Americans like Rachel Corrie was murdered by the Israeli government, an American. Did they even say one word about it? Did they say when Shireen Abu Akleh was murdered, they say, oh, we're very concerned about this. We're looking into this very strongly. What did they do? Nothing. When Americans are being murdered by the Israeli government that they fully support, all of a sudden they lose this compassion and empathy. I just think you have to look at what the United States is supporting in Palestine. And if you realize that it's just the evil of that, and then just ask yourself this basic question: why do we support Ukraine? Why do we support Taiwan? Why do we support Israel? Do you really think it's because we want to help the people in these places be more sovereign and have more democracy and more freedom? Do you really think that? And if you do think that, why do you think that? What do you think America is about? Do you really think America is protecting people's sovereignty or democracy around the world? Has it made people in Ukraine more safe or more sovereign or more democratic? All these newspapers are being banned, political parties being banned, elections suspended, public services being abolished, public goods being sold off to private enterprises. Does that help? Has that been more democratic for people there? You know? Yeah, hey Duke. I mean, I think that makes sense to me. And again, it's like it seems like Russia and China have had a sort of plan when it comes to this kind of the way that they're going to take on these hegemonic Western powers. And like you said, it's playing the long game. As a Mohawk in USA, my nation and its sovereignty is viewed as a domestic dependent state. We accept this. Nobody's seriously arguing for full statehood anymore. The criteria for being domestic dependent state in USA law are all met by Ukraine. That's an interesting angle for that too. And then, unlike with Ukraine, I would actually support your nation being armed and trained and to engage in armed struggle. In your case, I would support that. I've got to actually get going soon, folks. It's like I wanted to. This whole press conference is an hour. It didn't even get into the Palestine UN stuff, but maybe we can look at that tomorrow. I've got to get going because I've got to pick up my kid from school soon. I think I have to do a small errand before I pick him up, so I've got to leave in probably 10 minutes in order to have time to do all that. One final push, though. A mere 22 subs away from the goal, folks. A mere 22 subs away from the goal. So if you can, support the work that I do on here on Twitch each and every day, where I do this kind of like Putin propaganda, this kind of like disinformatia or whatever you want to call it. I do this all the time, every single day here on Twitch. There's not a lot of people in our actual media that want to pay me to do this, but there are people in this community that do support the work that I do here, trying to destabilize the West, trying to abolish the state of Israel.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to
Russian
talk
and
you through
Chinese
all this.
propaganda. People like Top Scruffy. Thanks for the gifted sub, Top Scruffy. So if you can, please support the work that I do on here, folks. Every little bit helps. It's the only way that I can do this show each and every day is if people subscribe. We're 21 subs away from the goal. So if anyone else can please subscribe, I would appreciate it a lot. It would mean a lot. We would become friends. You support the work that I do on here. You can get all the tiny little images. If you gift 5 subs or above, you instantly become a elite member.
We simply use the
community.
computer to mark up the size of the account.
Thank you for suggesting Gazprom for my investment portfolio, Rob. So glad you are an official RT financial columnist.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, Joe. Blurp blurp. Thank you for the $10. That's very kind of you.
Good job, Rob.
Thank you, blurp blurp. I appreciate that. Do you have anyone else, any other takers want to support this program? 21 subs to go. I got to get out of here in about 5 minutes. 21 subs to go, 206 viewers. 21 people could be absolute heroes and legends and support this work that I'm doing on here each and every day. What do we think? What do we say, folks? 21 subs, 5 minutes should be no problem. I'll try to do a lengthier stream tomorrow and we can watch more of this press conference, which I'm sure I'm going to be incredibly mad about. Now, don't all rush to support at once because that does clog the pipes sometimes. The pipes get clogged. The tubes get clogged. Which is, I'm sure, what's happening right now. I think that's happening right now. The internet's not a big truck you can just dump something on. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Joe, thank you for the gifted sub and the 200 bits again. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate the support. Thank you. Only 20 subs to go, folks.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
4 people could be 5 sub gifters and be absolute legends and heroes.
You can count on me.
Rylon, thanks
You're
for
gonna
the
have good
gifted
old
sub.
Rob to
I
talk you
appreciate that.
through all
Very
this.
first gifted sub in the channel from Rylon. Thank you. Thank you for that. And thanks Riskinverse as well for 2 gifted subs. That's very kind of you, Riskinverse. There we go. We got 17 to go. And a hype train just about to pull out of the station. We got a hype train pulling out of the station. One more gifted sub is going to get that going. It's going to get that rolling. One more
You
sub.
can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you for the gifted sub. I appreciate it. Thanks, Hack All the Things.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
You hacked my sub number and made the number go up with your hacking skills. And thank you, Crystal, as well, for 2 gifted subs. Thank you, Crystal. Only 14 measly subs to go to get to the goal, folks. Can you believe that? Can you believe that there's only 14 subs to go? I can't. That's incredible. That's so few. That's just a handful. That's just like that's a small amount. That's a small little measly amount. Only 14 people could pay $4.99 to get all the wonderful benefits of being part of this community. The tiny images, the access to different friends, the ability to go up and down the different tiers in the friendship triangle system. You know, it's going to make you feel less alienated. It's going to make you feel less isolated. And we got hype train emotes as well. And we're at 88% of the way, which is a bad number to be at anyways. It'll make your family love and respect you again. We don't even need, because I'm your new family. We are your new family now. You don't need a family if your family doesn't love and respect you. Those are called toxic people. You don't need that. You can have a new family. And we're having a New Year party on March 19th. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this. Diego, thank you for the gifted sub. I appreciate it, Diego. Thank you. And thank you, Joe, for the 69 bits. You can have 2 families, unless your one family is like, I don't know if you should be spending time in this community anymore. And then, psh, they're gone. Okay? And that's me helping you. I'm trying to help you. Do we hear 13 more subs, folks? We're level 3 of this hype train. Level 3. Do we hear level 4? A measly minor 13 subs to go. Help me help you. That's right. That's all I'm saying. Oh, is it a crime? Is it a crime to try and help people out, Lioness? Is it a crime to try and make people less isolated? To give them more community? Oh, excuse me. If it is, then lock me up. Is it a crime to be the owner and operator of Twitch's only 2-dimensional triangle-shaped friendship access and trickle-down clout tiered reward system? Not yet, anyway. Not yet. That one is a gray area, legally speaking. Hyper-individualism, baby. Well, that's what the best place to be in hyper-individualist is together. That's the best place to do it. In a geometrically strong and supportive triangle-shaped network of different individuals. You know? If we keep stretching out the train timer, Rob can never leave. No, I really do have to leave soon. I really do. But we got 2 minutes left. Only 13 subs. Can you believe how fortunate we are? Can you believe how fortunate it is that there's only 13 subs to get to the goal? I think that's fantastic. I think that's wonderful. And now just 90 seconds left, folks. We're getting down to the wire here. 90 seconds left to support this program. I know we can do this. We can do this. We can get to the goal. I know that there's some brave heroes out there that want to support the work that I've been doing on here. You know, I clock in, I grab my lunch pail, I grab my work boots, I roll up my sleeves, and I put my time in, day out, in the content mines, trying to put on an entertaining and educational and fun show for various watchers, listeners, chatters around the world. And the only way that I'm able to do that is through the support that I get from people in this community. Into the Twitch mines.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
A working class streamer is something to be.
Working class streamer is something to be. Gilf of Tonkin, thanks for the 23 months. 1 month away from the 2-year sub badge. Shimmering Golden, Gilf of Tonkin. Thank you for that. That's going to have to do. I have to go. I guess I need a bit more time. But I appreciate everyone that supported the show today and every other day. Do you still have a minute left? If someone wants to give 12 subs in a minute, I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to stop you from doing that. I'm not going to tell you that you can't do that. But I will be back tomorrow. I'll try to make up the difference tomorrow. Maybe we can get to the karaoke goal tomorrow. I'm sure there's people watching around the world right now that would love to watch me sing a little song. Maybe we can work on that tomorrow. I know we can do this. Together, chat, there's nothing that we can't achieve. Okay, I gotta go. Take care, folks. Give my regards to Ugopnik. Ugopnik's probably going to want to play Helldivers too later, but if he asks about it, tell him I'm not going to be able to until later this evening, which I think he's probably going to be asleep because he lives around the world. Anyway, enjoy the Ugopnik stream. Thanks for watching. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll hang out some more. I'll try to put in some longer hours tomorrow. Until then, take care, folks. Goodbye.